And good evening. We want to welcome you here into the 23 ABC studios with Congressman and House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy here joining us for a live forum here on Facebook and all of our 23 ABC platforms. We're going to be talking about a lot of topics tonight, from healthcare, immigration, border security, water storage, lots of Social Security questions folks have been asking about. We want to put some information on your screen right now to tell you how we've gotten to this point. The last week here at 23 ABC, we've been soliciting your questions. We've been asking you on social media to send those in, as well as through Facebook, our comments, and we'll be taking live questions for folks watching right now. So keep those coming. We have our 23 ABC team standing by to take your questions and funnel them to us right here live with you with Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy. I want to jump right in, Congressman. Our first question is a video question. We'll pop it on the screen here so folks can watch. This is from Christian Romo. He has a question about immigration reform.
President Trump recently said that he would shut down the government in order to build his border wall. Do you agree that this would be the best approach at fixing our broken immigration system, or would you prefer establishing a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this nation, as a majority of Americans agree with?
Well, first, thank you for the question. I do believe we have to have a secure border. And we have watched since President Trump has taken office, illegal crossings along the southern border have dropped 70%. But it's not just people who are coming across. It's illegal drugs. And if anyone has ever walked that border or gone with the Border Patrol, you'll realize that we really need a secure border. Now, there's questions, can you put a full wall? Some areas it doesn't work. But with today's technology, and I just recently got back from Israel, watching the way they are able to have border walls with Syria, Lebanon, and others, even in their own area, that are very protective. You can use one from drones out to see what individuals are coming, and others to actually protect. But there are laws out there that were put in place by past administrations where it would not allow motorized vehicles in certain areas of the border. And that's the case. These coyotes know where to bring people. And that's the real challenge. So yes, we have to secure our border, but then we have to change our immigration system. Almost 50% of everyone that's here illegally came here legally on a visa. So you need to change that. I think the system of what we have, where it's just the luck of the lottery and then what is called chain migration, that you just bring all your family members in, doesn't work. I like the idea of tying it maybe to education, to guest workers, and to others of those coming into America. The other process, but I think we should break the chain migration. Those who came here illegally, I do believe if you were brought here as a child, it's your parents that caused the problem. And I think those children should be treated differently. But
you said earlier you support DACA.
Yeah, I support the idea. If we secure the border and we have an overall immigration reform where we change this process, those children, I believe in the rule of law. They didn't break the law, their parents did. I don't like the idea of amnesty. What I like the idea of going through is people can earn legal status. I think that's a better way to deal with the process going forward. So you stop the illegal crossing, you have an immigration system that actually works. I think it's crazy that people come here, get an engineering degree, and then we tell them to go to another country to compete against us. We found now within our own agriculture, we have a hard time with labor. I think a ability to have a guest workers program, individuals can come here and work and go back home, that's helpful.
We're going to, of course, get more of this immigration topic. I'm sure we'll have questions coming in live. I want to get to one of our first Facebook questions we got ahead of time here. Don McFarland, we'll put that on your screen. He says, I see reports in the news and Facebook stating that Republicans plan to cut Social Security payments to balance the budget. Is this true? He says our seniors paid into the system deserve to receive the benefit that has been paid for.
That is untrue. There's nothing out there. It's actually Republicans are fighting to protect the Social Security and Medicare. Medicare was cut when President Obama passed the ACA, Affordable Care Act, what people refer to as Obamacare. It cut Medicare by a great deal. So no, we want to protect that going forward. And really, when you look at that system was created when it was created, life expectancy was 63 years old, but you had to wait to 65 to get it. We've got to find a way that protects it for the next generation as well. There's a lot of ideas out there, but we want to not cut it, secure it, and have it there for the next generation.
All right. And our next question, we'll take you back here to the screen. This is from Tara Hunt, and she has a question about the opioid overdose crisis, which is getting national attention. Let's take a look right here.
The president declared opioid abuse as a national emergency, and Kern County has a growing rate of opioid abuse. There are no detox centers for low to no income residents that struggle with this, and these low income communities are the most affected by this issue. So I would like to know, what resources will you bring to Kern County to help fight this growing problem?
Well, that is a great question. Opioid overdoses have increased by 21% in the United States, and it's in every part of the country. Now, in the last Congress, we actually passed a bill that dealt with a great deal number of this, and it brought in more than $181 million each year going forward. I actually had a bipartisan bill put into that where the Minority Whip, Steny Hoyer, and I put in together, evaluating all the different programs to see which one actually works best moving forward. Since then, we've even moved further, where we have, I believe in the budget and appropriations coming up this year, it's $787 million to deal with this problem. And one is it's educating individuals, it's providing those medical units with the anti-drug to get people back going. I've worked with Walgreens and others where you could actually bring in your unused opioids and don't flush them down the toilet. Environmentally, that's not sound. Don't leave them out there because you'll never know. Maybe your kids, your kids' friends will come and take those. We want to dispose of those properly, and then what they have is look like a safe mailbox that you could just drop them in, and that's what people should be able to do. But this is an epidemic that we've got to get under control. Now, there's a lot of reasons for it. People are being overprescribed. This is one place that I worked very closely with the VA. We've had a number of men and women coming back from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're injured, and sometimes they're being overprescribed. We've seen it just here in Kern County and what causes that, and the epidemic and the addiction that comes from that, to being able to do something different there. And so we have made some real changes. Even I was just touring a couple months ago with a number of people here, our own local VA clinic, and one of my main questions was, how are the prescriptions now based upon the past and how much lower they have gone? So this is something that everybody needs to work towards, but Congress has really dealt with this in a bipartisan manner, passing a bill in the last Congress and moving forward this Congress as well.
A question just coming in from Tim Powers, and it's a question we're going to get in our next email question, or Facebook question we have behind us. He said in their live discussion here, I would like the Congress to tell us why Obamacare hasn't been repealed. We want a message in November that we want it repealed, not replaced. To this point, the wishes of the voters have been ignored. Of course, the question now, can you get this done in this next legislative session, or is this something that will play out in 2018?
We will get this done, and we have to get it done. Now, for Tim, if you watch the House, that's the body that I serve in, that has passed it. That has repealed it,
right,
and it put a replacement out there. The Senate came up short. There is a recess period where you're working in the district and we go back. We will readdress that. And this is really the question everybody has to talk about. Obamacare did three essential things. It gave greater control of government over health care. Remember, what small businesses know this better than anybody else. 50 employees or greater, you were on it. 30-hour work week. A number of employees found out they no longer had a job for 40 hours. They got cut to 30 hours. So now they have 2 part-time jobs. It created exchanges. It created 23 co-ops, and it took $2 billion from the taxpayers and provided it to them. In this short amount of time, 19 of them have collapsed. Only 4 of them are left. It created these exchanges, but now what has happened, and we've just watched what's going to happen here in Kern County. 40% of all the counties in America only have one provider. Now, Aetna just announced next year that they're pulling out of Kern County. And within those exchanges of Kern County, they had 30% of the market. So 30% of that market has to go look for something else. And the real challenge here is they're also going to find out next year their premiums are rising by double digits. So remember what was told, that your premiums would go down and that if you like your doctor, you keep it. Well, none of that rang true. And then the expansion of Medicaid itself. Well, this is a real question. In 2027, Medicaid will cost $1 trillion. Well, that's all the money that members of Congress actually appropriate. So we take away the military, take away Department of Ag, everything else. So you got to put Medicaid on a sustainable path. Our bill actually did that. We kept our promise. Now we need the Senate to follow through and keep the promise they made as well.
Do you think that's possible when you have a president who's been outwardly attacking members of the Senate this past week? I mean,
I find he's been encouraging them.
Right.
Look,
his tweets would say otherwise. But that does get me to this next question we have behind us here, and it is to the spirit of that and about President Trump here. He says, Brian Rossum writes, "You voted for a Republican health care plan that the nonpartisan OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, claims would take the affordable health care away from tens of thousands of constituents, raise premiums, allow insurance companies to sell, in his words, junk plans. President Trump, as we know, has called this a mean plan, the plan that passed the House. So later he praised it, of course, in the Rose Garden there. How can the voters, this viewer asks, trust in, how would the voters in your district have any confidence in your ability to improve their health care?"
Easily. Look at what they're having right now. So if we want to go, I don't know, I don't want to put words in Brian's mouth, but apparently he likes the ACA, maybe wants to keep it. Well, what do you say to those 30% in the exchange that now no longer have a provider? Or what do you say to all those in the exchange that are going to pay double digit? What I can say to them is we provided something different. And what's even better, so what we know what we did? We provided the choice to you. You get to be able to choose and pick. And we allowed more options. See, one of the worst problems with Obamacare is you all have to carry the same insurance. Well, that's maybe not what you want. You know, when Judy and I, when our kids were younger, we'd look for health care that covered braces. Well, when we get older, we want some other package. When we were young and not married at 23, we just want a catastrophic plan, right? Mm-hmm. Cost less, but cover me if something really serious happens. You can't have that under the ACA. So we broaden the choice, give the choice to the customer themselves, and let them pick from it. What will happen is premiums will lower. Now, what's interesting with the score that he was talking about, if you look at the actual numbers for Obamacare today, if you do not buy Obamacare, you have to pay a penalty or you get a waiver. Well, that's 19 million people. You know the number of people that have signed up in the exchanges for Obamacare? 12 million, but only 10 million of them pay. So almost twice as many people take the waiver. I was just in a small business in Bakersfield, dropping something off with them, and the small business owner comes in. I've worked there a long time. He goes, "You've got to solve this." I just pay the penalty because I can't afford it. And now what people and families have found is the deductible has risen to $5,000. So their premiums are up, their deductible's high. So I have a very easy time because I've listened to my constituents. I've worked on a better plan. I kept the exact word I'd say I do before the election, that we would repeal this and we'd replace it with something better, and that's exactly what we passed.
It's certainly complex, and one of the big issues is the pre-existing conditions that's been talked about, whether the new versions of this bill that are in the House and the Senate will include that. The House version did.
Yes.
And this next question we want to pop up here, the video question, this is from Eric Arias. He has a question about health care, but in this he specifically talks about pre-existing conditions.
Hello, Mr. McCarthy. My name is Eric, and I'm a fourth-year college student. Last June, I was diagnosed with stage 4 Burkitt's lymphoma, a rare and aggressive form of cancer. After 4 rounds of chemotherapy, and by the graces of God, the cancer went into remission. The Affordable Care Act protects people like myself who have a pre-existing condition from high insurance prices and from even being denied coverage. The Republicans in Congress have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act and eliminate these protections several times now. Instead of trying to repeal the bill, will congressional leadership now refocus its attention on making it work better for all Americans? And if so, how?
Well, first I want to say to you, I want you to continue to work to make sure your health care is there for you. Never did we ever repeal Obamacare and repeal pre-existing conditions. We have always kept that. Our bill has kept that. I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I lost my father at a young age to a very fast-growing cancer. It's young in my view because he was 58 years old. He survived 3 years of that. I went through every doctor's appointment with him, through chemo, through the surgery, through radiation. The drugs are continuing to get better. This is what I found, especially with the ACA. The tax that it raised onto new devices, it's actually slowing our ability for America to continue to make advances in healthcare. So what we have found is we've taken a step back, looked and listened to those in the medical community, listened to those who are purchasing insurance, the ACA, and in the Obamacare bill, those members of Congress have to be on Obamacare. That is the health care that I have. I want to make sure, one, your health care, that you have it and you continue to have it no matter where you go. But what's even more important, I want you to be able to choose. You may find that there's something else you need in that health care, and you're actually to choose in it and have it. Now, one thing that we do to make sure to take care of pre-existing conditions, but 5% of the sickest people take up 50% of the entire amount of money. So what we actually do in the process, the bill that passed in the House, allow you to go into the network, pick from a number of different healthcare providers, and the government comes in and pays the big portion of it. And what happens in that process is you never leave and go into some pool, but you get to choose what it is. So you may really like, one, I love Dr. Patel and the way he treated my father. I love the idea that my father could go there. I don't want you to locked into something you can't. I want you to be able to choose the very best health care that you think's for you, and that's what our bill does. So read through it. It's not 2,000 pages. It's less than 150.
But we can agree that you're not confident with the version that passes with pre-existing conditions out of that bill. Those protections will remain.
We've always kept pre-existing conditions inside our bills.
Right. Okay. So let's get some of these questions coming in here. And one that fits with what happened today, President Trump announcing he signed that ban of transgender recruits from the military today. Neil Sanapa, sorry if I got your name wrong, asked about that, as well as also the removing of statues. So lots of things that are happening across the country. First, to the ban of the transgender individuals serving in the military. A good idea, something that is distracting overall in the larger legislative goal of this administration, or is this something that is needed?
Well, on the floor there was an amendment about if you're in the military, should the military pay for the surgery of transgender? Now the challenge is when you're in the military, you have to be prepared to be deployed at any time. I'll give you an example. There's another member of mine that had an appointment to the Naval Academy. She graduated, but she had some concerns within her stomach. They'd never commission her because she was on medication and she couldn't get up and go right away. When you have a surgery, you're out of commission for a while. Now, I don't think the military should pay for the surgery, but if somebody can meet the criteria, if the military generals say, we need somebody to run this fast, climb this high, lift this much, if you can do it, you can be part of the military. So I don't know that you ban everybody based upon that, but I don't think this is a role that the military should be paying for, because what happens during that surgery, you're out of commission for more than a year. We need to make sure those who are actually serving could be deployed at moment's notice.
Right. Let's get to our next, and this has to do with the military, our next Facebook question that came in earlier today. This is from Kathy Harlan. She asks, how will the military build up? Of course, President Trump announcing new addition of troops to Afghanistan, the new developments in that country about how the future of that will be paid for. She asked simply, how will it be paid for? Are there plans, and this goes to one of the other viewers' questions, are there plans to cut Medicaid or Social Security funding to make up for some of that spending to the military?
No, we are not cutting Medicaid. We're not cutting Social Security funding. What we've done is we have a budget. We have a set number. We cut other elements and find savings in other places. Now, if there's anything we have hopefully learned with Iraq, if you set a deadline and you pull out too soon, that's how ISIS was created. And what happened? We had to come back in. So we found ways as when we came back into success. From giving air cover to embedding few men and women and training the local military to be successful. We find in Afghanistan there's been some challenges, and more importantly, what President Trump's has been able, the success he's been able to do. You watched what he did in Syria. The last administration waited 12 times where Assad crossed the red line and no one said anything. Sending 59 cruise missiles in a few moments sent a clear message. Sending a clear message to Pakistan that you can't run across the border and hide. It's roughly about 4,000 troops. What he's doing is not setting a deadline based upon a date. He has a deadline based upon what's happening on the ground. Let's make sure we have a very stable country and not just drastically pull out and have ISIS run over the entire country.
So you agree, the president's been clear, he doesn't want to see nation building in these countries. He wants to see an aggressive attack on terrorism, and that be the focus of the mission.
And we want to stabilize it, and then be able to...
And no cuts to Medicaid or Social Security in that process. One question coming in here is to Facebook. This is from Hortatia, sorry if I get your name wrong, Carbajal. He asked about Sheriff Joe Arpaio today, the president, just moments before our broadcast tonight, announcing he will pardon him. Again, is this, we talk about the president and what you're trying to accomplish in Congress, is this another distraction that grabs the news cycle for the next week, that gets away from when you guys go back in the House and try to get those key infrastructure and reform, healthcare, tax reform? Is this another distraction along that process, and should he do this at this time?
I don't know. It's a distraction. It's a role the president has. It is something the president can do. Other presidents have pardoned other people, so he has a criteria of what he looks at and why he did it. I have not been able to read through it and see what the difference is and why from that process, but I don't think it stops any of our agenda going forward. It's not him, it's not the president acting outside of the role or the responsibilities of a president. It's exactly one of the roles that he has.
Okay, and our next question is going to be a video one, but we're getting people on Facebook asking about do you support the government shutdown in lieu to force the Congress to pay for the border wall? I want you to watch this question real quick, and then we'll get in that discussion about how to pay for the border wall.
Greetings, Congressman McCarthy. I personally have a problem. The current Democratic candidate is one that I would never vote for. And I've lost tremendous faith in your ability to represent myself in...
Bit of a technical difficulty here. I can read if our crews will let me know if we get that back up. I'll read and paraphrase for Mr. Rickett here. He went on to say he lost confidence in your ability to represent himself in this time. He says he's disabled, went to support of Trump Care. He says he would have lost his health care coverage due to pre-existing conditions. He said he cannot afford to purchase any insurance since he's disabled, and that would have put his well-being in tremendous jeopardy. He also went on to say your support of the southern wall border construction is a concern to him, considering the estimated cost of that is between $12 and $25 billion. And he also said that money would cover, in his opinion, could cover the cost of health care for the poor. Both of those budgets have been cut to the federal budget in California. He says he'd like to know what a voter like him you would say to that voter to gain their vote for you in this next election.
Well, the first thing I say is thank you for the question. Secondly, I can always sit back and I'd love to earn your support. That's part of the role. We may not always agree, but I want you to understand this. I will always listen to you, and I'll tell you exactly where we stand. You would not lose your health care for pre-existing conditions. Our bill protected that. If you are disabled and for some reason you don't have health care, come see my office because we'll work for you and make sure that gets taken care of. When it comes to the wall, the president ran on securing the border. If we want to be able to solve our immigration problem, the first thing we have to do is secure our border. It will not cost the statement that you've made. The government doesn't have to be shut down. The government won't be shut down.
The president seems pretty adamant about it.
Look, we can all work towards it. We just passed in the House $1.6 billion to actually help secure the border and start building it. One thing we have found for those that don't believe in the wall, go down to the southern portion of California, and they will show you where the wall has helped, where the dual walls has actually transformed the transformation of people going back and forth illegally, but still the ability for legal movement back and forth. What's coming across that wall? Parts that don't have it, you find lots of drugs, you find the movement of guns and others. We want to make sure we secure our country. And in where the world is today and the different videos that are being shown, we see the things that are happening around the world. We want to make sure that America is protected, that we're not having terrorists come across as well.
And you sound pretty confident that there won't be a government shutdown, but the president has been, putting this on Twitter. And again, we mentioned earlier, he's attacking the Senate Majority Leader. He's been attacking Paul Ryan. Some have to wonder if you're next in this, as you try to get his agenda pushed as a Republican. Does his, and we'll get more to the questions, but I have to ask you about this because it seems to be the common theme in a lot of these issues we discussed. The president seems to be getting in his own way in a lot of his legislative agenda. Is it frustrating to you? And And I've spoken to some folks who, you know, the week that infrastructure spending was going to be announced, there was a spirit of enthusiasm that something of his key campaign promises were going to be tackled. Of course, then that press conference about Charlottesville came out in the comments there. How do you, in Congress, deal with what the president says? Do you take it at its word? Do you take it at face value? Or do you just sort of dismiss that and continue on with what you do?
Look, there's three different branches in government. We have a role, the executive branch has a role, and the judiciary has a role. And everybody has an ability to communicate and say what they want. This president campaigned this way. This is the way the country elected him. I have worked closely with him. I know him quite well. We communicate together. The things about what he tweets is a way to communicate with the American public. It's also a way to encourage. It's also a way to show things in advance of direction where he wants to go. But I found this president, he wants to work with other individuals. What's difficult in where we are today is it almost seems a country that's so divided. It seems a country that wants to judge on a missed word or a misstatement or a misspelling in a tweet. I look at it like this. I think it's time. We don't have to be from red or blue states. We're all Americans first. When I work and go back to D.C. and come home every week, some of my best friends are on the other side of the aisle. But I don't judge friends based upon their Republican or Democrat, and we may not agree on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like there's been a bonding almost between Republicans in the Senate and Republicans in the House, as well as you say, potentially between Democrats and Republicans. But is it because of what the president's been saying? You almost you mentioned those three those three judicial branches. It almost seems that you have to come together to come with a common purpose to keep going on what you're going when the president says all that he says.
Well,
on
the
Twitter.
one thing that usually happens, okay, in campaigns sometimes gets heated, but normally after a campaign, a new president gets 9 months of a honeymoon.
Right.
That never took place. No president has ever had to wait this long to have a cabinet approved. When a new administration comes in, there's 1,200 positions that have to go through the Senate. The Senate can take up 30 hours on each one. They are doing that now. All that does is slow government down, which is hurtful. But it almost seems that's the action that takes place. Harvard did a study in the first 100 days. And they looked at all the reporting from CNN upon the president. 92% of everything reported was negative. It's almost like news today is not news, it's opinion. And you have a channel for whatever philosophical belief you have to get the news in whatever philosophy you want to get it in. What happened to the days that says just because an idea comes from the other side of the aisle doesn't mean it's a bad idea? Ronald Reagan was successful with Tip O'Neill. We were able to achieve big things. I believe that same thing will take place now. This is a president who was elected to be a disruptor, to push government to be more effective, more efficient, and more accountable. So he's going to make these statements.
So give the president more time is what I kind of hear.
You should. But I don't know why people are so judgmental of this president as well. I mean, I'm seeing where people are asking things to change in America that they never asked for the last 8 years. You know, why don't we work together instead of looking at the differences of one another, we have more in common. I'll tell you what, one of the things I work on and focus a great deal on is about the treatment of vets. I've been working on a bill for quite some time, just from education and changing the process for the VA. We've been successful this year on a lot of those bills. And the majority of those bills have been 400 votes for them. The majority of bills that normally pass the House are bipartisan.
Right.
There's only a few that really divide us. But the country goes, and I listen to statements even tonight where people think in our health care bill that we took away pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Never happened. That's why I think we should all take a deep breath. Let's look where we agree, and let's find where we can come together. Now remember, Washington, D.C. is the nation's capital. It's our nation's capital, even though George Washington was sworn in on Wall Street and Philadelphia on his second term. How did Washington, D.C. become the capital? It was a compromise that Hamilton created based upon creating our banking system. No one person is going to get 100% of what they want. but you should fight for your principles and your philosophy, but find a place that you could find common ground.
I want to echo on that spirit of what you're talking about, coming forward, reaching across the aisle, really uniting people. I got to be honest with you, Congressman, a lot of the questions we've received and still are receiving, I'm looking at them here, constituents want a live town hall, and of course, we appreciate you doing this and answering questions, but in a lot of these comments, it's face-to-face. They want to meet you, they want to speak with you. To what you just said, is there something that you can bridge and see that these are not people, and you read the comments, that necessarily agree with your agenda or your politics, but can there be something said about bringing people together and having a conversation, and do you plan it sometime in 2018 or at the end of this year?
Oh, I always do. And what I try to do, I believe in continual improvement. So what I do is I do town halls in many different fashions. Now, could you tell me when I was first elected, could we do a Facebook Live? They didn't have the opportunity to do it. People get their news differently. So I went out and I surveyed the constituents, not based upon party things, just that you live in the district. How would you best like to have a town hall? 78% like telephone town halls, not Facebook Live, not in person. Because they can be home and I can call and it can be up to date. They can listen, they can ask questions, not somebody that's going to be bussed in to disrupt them, to just take over and try to make one statement or the other. They want to be able to hear, they want to be able to make their statement, they want me to listen, they want me to answer. So I try to do what's best they want. So I do a telephone town hall every single month. I do mobile office days where
you just have
the
one like
staff,
Isabella, is that correct?
I have them every single month
Right.
in all these outlying communities. So we'll go to you. I was into Tehachapi today. I go into businesses, I go into organizations. I'm always, how many times am I on the news that you can listen?
Sure.
I don't know if there's more elected officials do it. How many elected officials done Facebook town hall, right? So I try to be able to reach the constituents in every shape or manner, especially with technology in a better way. And we'll do town halls as well. The challenge is, since becoming majority leader, you got people being bussed in. And I have this lots of times. They'll come to the house, they'll try to disrupt, they come into the office to try to disrupt. We want to make sure we're able to serve the constituents at best. So asking their opinions and asking how they best want to be served.
All right, we want to get back to a Facebook question that came in. This is from Hortensia. I apologize for getting your name wrong. Cabral, he asked, what are you doing to reach out to the Latino community to ensure you are representing their needs?
Well, I don't break people up based upon the color of skin. My district is very diverse, so I go to all elements of my district. I reach into schools. I reach into each area from the different towns and just try to listen. Especially, you know, when you do a telephone town hall, you call everyone. And whoever wants to listen have the ability to listen. Also, if they never want me to call them again, they can hit one button, I'll never bother them again. And so, you know, when you're doing a telephone town hall, it's not based upon your color of skin, it's not based on your registration, it's who's ever in the queue that wants to ask it. So I want to make sure I'm listening to all elements of the community. And I want to reach out into those communities as well.
One more question. Here we have another video question. This is from Tyler Johnson. He asked about tax reform. Let's take a listen to that.
Hi, Kevin. My question is in regards to taxes. As you know, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. We have trillions of dollars in overseas assets. My question for you is, what is your confidence level in getting tax reform done this year? And in your mind, what needs to be addressed to help make our tax code more favorable for business owners?
Well, thank you for your question. I think it's one of the most important ones. Getting growth in this country will create more jobs, will create more income, and will help us solve many of the problems. You had questions about Medicare, Social Security, military. That helps solve it. And when I look at the last 8 years, our growth has actually been low. If you take the highest growth year in the last 8 years, the very highest year is lower than the lowest year under the 8 years of Bill Clinton. So the worst year under Bill Clinton is still better than under the best years of the last 8. Our tax code hurts America. So what our tax code says, it gives you the highest corporate rate. So we have watched what is called these inversions, where companies come in and get bought and then get domiciled in another country. Why? Because their corporate rate's lower. Then what's happening is if you sell worldwide and you make money
like
overseas,
Apple.
Yeah. Right. Apple has more than $230 billion sitting in other countries. Why? Because if they brought it back, they'd be taxed at a high number. Instead of being able to bring it back, invest in Apple, or give a dividend. So we have to lower the corporate rate to make it competitive. We have to go to territorial tax to get repatriation. A lot of money will come back, we'll get growth. But now we have it very difficult in our tax code where we have 7 different rates. We have all these different loopholes, which people would say. So why do we have to set 7? Why don't we make it 3 individual rates? Why don't we lower the rates to let people keep more of what they earn? I think they're a better use of the money than government. Why don't we close the loopholes to pay for it, but keep the home deduction and keep the charitable deduction? So anybody could fill out their tax code on a postcard. It's not difficult. And you know what happens when we do that? It's fair. And then what will happen, it'll be pro-growth. We'll have greater income. The country will grow. More jobs will be created. You'll have more money to send your kids to college, more money to buy the houses. That is an economy we're working towards. Now, the question, too, was, how confident do I feel getting this done?
Yeah.
Article 1, Section 7 says all tax reform, all taxes start in the House. And so that starts under Ways and Means. This is something we've worked very hard at. We will get this passed before the end of this year.
Confident?
Very confident.
With the president's
With the president's
support?
signing, yes.
Okay. We're gonna hold you to that.
Hold me to it, yeah.
We'll hold you to that. Stephen asked, we're going to rattle off some of these questions we have here. What do you think about California talking about seceding from the U.S.? I'm not sure if you've heard about that.
I think it's crazy.
You're right. Something that would never happen, obviously.
Look, California is 12% of the nation's population. But the challenge in California is here we are, we've watched where raising taxes haven't done well. California gets roughly at a minimum 25% of their entire budget from 144,000 people out of 39 million. So what's happening is people are leaving the country,
right,
leaving
businesses.
the state. Yeah, and the burdensome that they're putting on it. I've just watched that it's almost become too burden for people to do business in California. Remember, I started my first business when I was 20 years old in Bakersfield. I don't know if I could start that same business today because of the climate of California.
Some more questions. We're getting Christian or Romo again. We talked about this. Do you support shutting down the government to build that border wall? You said no.
Look, I don't.
That's not going to happen.
We're not going to shut the government down. This is why. This is political. Just trying to make a political question. It's a negative tinge. Why don't we say this? Why don't we find a way that we come together, secure the border, and fund the government and make things work harder? I think that's an easy way to do. Look, I'm an optimist.
You talk to the president often. Would you relay that message to him?
Look, I talk to the president. I tell him all the time as we go forward. We passed funding of the wall. The government doesn't need to nobody wins in a government shutdown.
Right.
So let's get the work done and not work towards that.
Getting some questions here locally with some issues here. Drinking water around Kern County. Frank asked why it's so polluted, including the air and dirt. We obviously know there's some geographical issues to our air quality here, as well as some regulations that have helped reduce the particulate matter in the air. But drinking water, is that something you see across your desk in terms of how we can further protect groundwater in Kern County?
Well, we continue to work for groundwater in Kern County and throughout. We want to make sure our water is clean. There's different standards that we go through. But what's more importantly, you want to make sure you have water in California. Now, I'm very proud of the fact in the end of the last Congress, Senator Dianne Feinstein and I worked a deal together to pass the WIN Act so more water could come down to the valley. It passed the Senate with more than 70 votes, even though Barbara Boxer opposed it. It was the first time we had major water legislation in more than a quarter of a century. Senator Feinstein and I worked on it together for more than 6 years, and we both had to come together to make it happen. And that allowed more water to come in. Congressman David Valadao has worked on water. We've been able to pass his bill out of the floor. Working with the air quality, something we continue to work on.
Right.
Our air is actually cleaner today than it was 20 years ago, but we could still be cleaner. And so we work towards that to actually find common sense to be able to make it happen.
That's got to be tough, though, with the air quality, because we talk about our population here in Kern County's expanding. We talked now Tone Ranch's approval for a new development near the base of the Grapevine. You have commerce that's increasing throughout the state as the economy gets better. So it's an issue that will certainly be tough to tackle.
Now remember, the reason why you got 2 mountain ranges that go around. So we collect.
Right.
So some of the pollution we're collecting is delivered from San Francisco.
Fresno.
But we pay penalties that they don't pay with it being created. Now the other thing we have to look upon, and this has been very positive what we've been able to accomplish so far, but there's more to go. Valley fever. Because of the pores within the dirt that we have from valley fever here in Arizona is where the majority of it comes from. I created a caucus. We have a clinical randomized trial going on right now, how best to treat it. We got $5 million. I brought the head of the CDC and the NIH here for a symposium to actually see. But former Dr. Einstein and Dr. Larwood and so many before have worked so hard on this. We're able to get some resource there. We've just now also got another grant for more than $4 million to work on the vaccine. And what happens is it's just not people that get valley fever, it's also animals. Right. Dogs get it.
And they've been involved in the testing
So there's
process.
a good way to be able to see if you can treat an animal before you're going into a human as well.
Some people have said, should there be a mandatory test for valley fever if someone presents symptoms of the flu or of body aches or of the common symptoms of valley fever? Do you think there should be a standard medical test where the blood test that eliminates a lot of the confusion in the diagnosis process? Should that be something that we consider here in Kern
Well,
County?
I actually just worked with the FDA a year ago because there's a small San Diego company that actually brought back a little test that can go very rapidly. Mm-hmm. And the problem is this is an orphan disease, so you don't have the size of the scope of getting a return on the investment. We got the FDA approval to go through with that. So this is the way that people can. I don't know if you have to have it mandatory. What you really need to ask for is people get at different degrees. Mm-hmm. So what happens is some may have the flu, but what you need to do when you go into the doctor, ask them about it, and if you do come back and have valley fever, ask to be in the clinical test, because we need enough people in it to know the best way to treat it, and it's happening right now.
We should mention we had a discussion with Mercy Hospital folks as well as I believe one of the doctors on the leading edge of valley fever research. That's on our Facebook page right now. You'll have to dig for it a little bit, but good discussion happened yesterday. I want to get you a topic from Samantha here. She asked, what's your view on regulating recreational marijuana and potentially generating tax income and create more jobs for our area? We've been reporting on this. California cities seeing a boom now with folks buying up land with the potential to cultivate this marijuana out there. Is this a good thing for our county, or is this something that will ultimately be detrimental?
You know, I know people have a lot of different positions on marijuana. I watch my friends in school. Some start with marijuana, and they went to other drugs, and some are no longer with me. I have real concerns about what we do with this. I know how people have voted on it. I know from a medical point of view where people treat it, but I don't think people should let this to be believed to a younger generation.
You're against recreational.
That it's no big deal.
You're against recreational.
I have a real concern about where it takes us and the ramifications. I mean, let's study what's happened in Colorado. Let's see where things have gone wrong. Let's see where it's gotten in the wrong hands. I mean, it's not something to be taken lightly.
Janelle asked, please ask about funding for law enforcement for Kern County to help combat the crime rate here. Is there anything that can be done at the House level, federally?
Well, in the federally, it's a little more difficult, but I can go through grants and others. I work very closely with the police chief and with the sheriff. I was able to get a grant for the fire department based upon what we have out here through our lands, from our federal lands and others with the fire, because with Kern County, we have an up and down economy based upon the price of oil.
Right.
And so you have these big swings. So it's very difficult, especially within law enforcement. You can't move up and lower law enforcement and try to build that back up rather quickly, and that makes it difficult. And we have a very diverse county, which is cities are further apart, and to be able to have they really stretch themselves and go a long way. And then think of this: when this is going on, how many other times do we have a manhunt going on, where we had that unfortunate situation where we had that murderer out there killing people, and you want to get that individual. But the community has to understand that that's going to cost money too. And so we've got to be able to reflect that in the budget to support our law enforcement.
J.M. Knight asked, and this is an issue you've been passionate about, he asked, why do VA patients have such a delay in travel pay in Bakersfield? For most of us, the owed pay comes in 6 to 9 months later. Then they said when the electronic system was started, it would be around 14 days, not yet. He says his cancer radiation treatment appointments had to cancel and reset them. He asked, can you help?
Yes, and anytime you have a problem, I don't care who you are, if you're a constituent in the 23rd District, if you have an issue with the federal government, from taxes, from the VA, come please see our office. We want to help you. But this is something I've worked a great deal on. And this is where technology can help us. Well, first of all, why do you have to travel for that treatment? We have the ability to treat you with cancer right here. And you know what? If you're going to be going away for your chemo and others, that's difficult on your body. So being closer to home is better. So we created the Choice Act, where you can go within local community to get your treatment as well, and you could have the choice to do that. We're putting in a new computer system. Veterans should be able to have a system much like what Uber or Lyft has, where they can actually take their phone, set an appointment, rate their doctor, have their medical records right there, and you know what? Have their medical reimbursement right there as well. We can make that happen, and that's what I've been pushing to do. We've had some very good success so far on the number of bills passed dealing with the VA and improving that and having that signed by the President.
All right, and we are still waiting for some questions here. We've gotten to all the ones that we've been sent in.
Has my mom asked any yet?
She has not asked a question.
I wonder if she does as a habit. I didn't get to tell her before.
I haven't seen any come through there. Susan St. Laurent asks, again, more about the town halls and why there hasn't been a public town hall at, say, a gymnasium or some sort of public forum. We had questions about maternity leave, whether that can be strengthened. And also a question from, if we want to pop it up here, this is Vivi Davis. And she asked about this sanctuary city. She was saying Bakersfield considered a sanctuary city in Kern County. She saw us on a list somewhere. This has been something that's been floating around the internet. Is that true?
I think Donnie Youngblood had addressed this. It was misquoted that Bakersfield was, because Bakersfield and Kern County have not voted to be a sanctuary city. The challenge is what the state is doing with their law and what their direction from the state attorney general. This is something that we're dealing with, and really you want to talk about this. Take away the issue itself of what sanctuary city deals with, but think about this. If people can ignore laws, then what's keeping the Kern County Board of Supervisors from saying, well, let's ignore the Endangered Species Act and let us build where we want to. Or let's ignore the new state law dealing with underground water. We'll just do with what we want to. So we are a nation that has rule of law. And the idea that cities are going to pick and choose, and then we have these horrific stories of somebody that has been picked up 5 times and then been let go, and they should have been back in another country, and they ended up murdering or raping somebody. So, I mean, those are stories you don't want to hear about, but I don't believe that cities and counties should pick and choose what law they want to live by. You know, then what keeps me from saying I'll just drive as fast as I want to? You know,
right.
There's different. We're a rule of law. And we should come to that, and we should be able to abide by that. Because remember, the power rests with the people. The people have the say of what type of government we're able to have, of who's going to be elected, and what laws are going to be engaged. And that at times it's going to be a conflict. California state's going to do something different than what the federal government's doing right now. But we have a rule that we're going to have to live by. Look, I know there are challenges in this country, but I still believe it's the greatest country in the nation. And you know, it always reminds me of this one story. And I always tell the story about Shimon Peres comes to the U.S. Capitol. And he's the president of Israel at the time, and he's 91 years old. And we're giving him a medal. And he looks out at us and he goes, "You live in the greatest nation that's ever been on the face of the earth." People look at him. He's not even American. He says, "You know what your greatness comes? Not what America takes, but what America gives." America will go as far as give the ultimate sacrifice of a life for another country to even have freedom. And with that freedom becomes human rights. You know, very few countries, I don't know of any other, that was conceived in liberty and dedicated the proposition that all men and women are equal. That sets us apart from everybody else. There are things that divide us, but the things that unite us are so much greater.
Well, certainly on that note, we will end this Facebook Live forum, and in a spirit of unity and a spirit of what makes this country great. Of course, there's going to be a lot of issues that you'll be tackling when you head back to Washington at this next legislative session. We, of course, as we say always, we wish you luck, and of course hope you're supporting the constituents here in Kern County. And again, we want to thank you for joining us here on our 23ABC Facebook Live forum with Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy. If you missed this, or if you're just joining in now, we're going to end this live stream, and you can watch it in its entirety on our Facebook page as well as our website, turnto23.com. For everyone here at 23ABC, as well as Congressman McCarthy, we thank you for joining us.